If I told you that Iran is very sexually open, and as long as you have money, you can always find sexual services in Iran, would you think I have completely lost my mind? As we know, anything related to sex in Iran is a serious crime. Not just sex work, not even softcore content. Just borderline behavior can get you into serious trouble. Article 619 of Iran's Islamic Penal Code clearly states, any immoral behavior in public, including physical or verbal harassment, can result in up to 74 lashes, or up to 2 years in prison. Iran's public morality law go even further. Any interaction between unrelated men and women, such as kissing, touching, even prolonged eye contact, can be considered a violation of public decency and punished directly by the morality police. Yes, in Iran, even flirting with beautiful women in public can get you arrested. And sex itself, that's the ultimate taboo. Dating in public is a crime. Getting a hotel room together is also a crime. Premarital sex is a major crime punished by 100 lashes or imprisonment, and adultery that can carry the death penalty. So here's the obvious question. With the sexual control this extreme, how does the sex industry still exist in Iran? Well, laws are rigid, but people are not. Despite strict Islamic prohibition, over 30% of young people in Tehran have had premarital sex. Yes, that's far lower than the United States, where the number is close to 90%. But in a country enforcing some of the world's strict religious laws, that number still shocked me. One-night stands are of course forbidden, but hooking up in Iran is far more common than most people imagine. Iranian law bans the sex work altogether, but in reality, the sex industry operates through a religious loophole. This is not some secret either. The underground sexual culture and even the existence of sex industry are widely known, including within Iran's ruling clerical class. In other words, Iran's sexual openness and Iran's sex industry exist with quiet approval from those in power. And that creates a massive contradiction. If sex work is clearly forbidden under Islamic law, why is it tolerated? Why doesn't Iran crack down on it? Why does Iran preach religious purity while quietly allowing sex industry to flourish? Hi everybody, I'm Tony. In this episode, we're going to talk about Iran's sex industry and the paradox of sexual control. In a country that officially claims there is no sex industry, why has the underground system become more organized, more exploitative, and more brutal? So when I first started researching this topic, one thing surprised me immediately. A large number of clerics are involved in Iran's underground sex industry. So who are these clerics? So they're pretty much religious teachers in mosques and spiritual leaders in local communities. They lead group prayers, they give sermons, they're supposed to guide people morally. In simple terms, they are like pastors in a church. Now at this point, some of you might be thinking, so is the Iran sex industry just a clerical class making side money? That's what I thought at first too. But it turns out that assumption was wrong. The clerics involved in these activities are almost always low-ranking clergy. They do this out of economic desperation, not power. The truly powerful clerics don't run underground brothels. Those people sell oil. Iran's Revolutionary Guards controls around 30% of country's mineral resources. Underground brothels? That's just pocket change. So the question becomes, is it that Iran's clerics have lost control? Has Islamic law become meaningless? No, not even close. Morality police are still everywhere. If a boy and a girl walk too close together on the streets, they can be stopped and corrected. The mandatory hijab laws are enforced with extreme severity. Even foreign women cannot enter the country without a proper head covering. And yet, despite all of this, Iran's sex industry has already taken root and continues to grow wildly underground. So how does it actually operate under such extreme control? Here's the thing. In Iran, the sex industry is generally divided into two categories. And honestly, this part looks surprisingly similar to the United States and the broader Western world. The first category is called wife renting. In practice, this functions a lot like sugar daddy arrangements. The second category is rented romance, which, to put it bluntly, is escort-style companionship. Now, here's the part that I want you to pay close attention to. Unlike Western world, both wife renting and escort-style companionship are technically legal in Iran. Or more accurately, they exist within legal loopholes. And I already know what's coming. Some of you in the comment section is so ready to say, Tony, you are making this one up. Prostitution is illegal in the US, and you are telling me it's legal in Iran. Have you lost your mind? Relax, just hear me out. Under Islamic law, prostitution is absolutely forbidden. No debate there. But within Shia Islamic jurisprudence, there is something called temporary marriage. And this is where things get complicated. Temporary marriage is very different from what we usually think as normal marriage. In a normal marriage, unless you divorce, the relationship is permanent. But temporary marriage works in the very opposite way. From the very beginning, the duration must be clearly defined. It can be a few hours, a few days, a few months. Once the time is up, the marriage automatically ends. And here's another key rule. Compensation must be negotiated in advance. During the agreed period, the man must pay the woman a specific amount of money that's specified in the marriage contract. You might say, talking about money feels cheap. What if two people just like each other and don't want to talk about payment? Nope, that's not allowed. The amount must be agreed upon and written into marriage contract. And no, temporary marriage does not require the couple to live together. There is no expectation of long-term cohabitation and no long-term obligation afterward. Alright, background over, now let's talk about the stuff you will never hear on cable news. How does temporary marriage actually work in Iran today? Let's start with the most common version, the people casually call renting a wife. Under the temporary marriage framework, this part is actually pretty easy to understand. It's basically a sugar baby arrangement. But in practice, the women involved are mostly divorced or widowed. Why that is the case? Why not young unmarried women? It's not impossible, it's just extremely rare. Why? Because young unmarried women usually still have family supervision. And more importantly, they still have marriage value. So think about it. A woman who has never been married but has temporary marriage on her resume, forget about conservative Iran. Even in the US, that's not exactly something you would want to include on your Hinge profile. But divorced and widowed women are in a very different position. In Iranian society, divorce already carries a heavy social stigma. In many cases, divorce also means unstable income. Job opportunities for women in Iran are already limited. High-paying careers almost non-existent. So for many women, being financially supported through temporary marriage become a way to survive. So how does it actually work? Surprisingly, it's very straightforward. If both sides feel compatible and there's mutual interest, they sign a temporary contract. Payment is agreed on monthly. The term could be 1 year, 2 years, or just few months. During that time, they can live as husband and wife. I have a friend who does business in Iran. He's a bit older than me. At one point, he was aggressively pursued by a divorced Iranian woman. My friend at the time was very hesitant, but she was not. She basically said, let's start small. Let's do a 6-month trial subscription for $1 a month. And if you like the experience, we can upgrade to a longer plan. I have no idea whether my friend ever redeemed that subscription trial. What I can say is this. She knew marrying him permanently was unlikely given her situation, but dating normally, hotels, that comes with real risks. Police, morality enforcement, and legal trouble. So temporary marriage becomes a legal workaround to reduce that risk. Now let's quickly talk about numbers. What does renting a wife actually cost in Iran today? I did look this one up, but I need to be very clear here. This is a highly underground, non-transparent market. Prices are privately negotiated, shared through word of mouth. There's no such things as the official price list. So the number I'm giving you right now are roughly estimates based on public reporting and research. That said, based on different region, the woman's situation, and the length of the contract, monthly payment generally range from $80 to $500. And one more thing, and this part is not funny. If a man fails to pay during the contract period, this is not oops, we broke up, that kind of thing. This actually means prison time. Yes, the actual prison. So before entering any temporary marriage, you would better think carefully about your monthly payment and your lease term. If you have any questions about determining affordability, you can just go ahead and check with Dave Ramsey. So where do people actually find this arrangement? You obviously cannot walk up to a woman on the street and ask. But since temporary marriage is legally permitted under Shia law, does Iran have dedicated platforms, like American sugar baby websites? And believe it or not, there is a website called secret.ir. It functions as a platform for sugar baby style arrangements and escort services. So basically all the profiles are right there, and of course each one comes with a few photos, strategically cropped, showing about 3/4 of the chest. And you browse, pick your favorite, and negotiate directly. Don't try this website without a VPN, the connection isn't secure. I don't have a VPN sponsor, so honestly any VPN will do. If you are someone more old school, then it's all about connections. If you happen to know someone like Jeffrey Epstein, Just kidding, relax. Remember I mentioned earlier that some low-ranking clerics, out of economic necessity, act as matchmakers. If they successfully connect two parties, they take a middleman fee. And sometimes, these services can also be disguised as private caregiving, companionship, or personal assistance, which honestly is not that different from how escort services used to hide on Craigslist as housekeeping services. Alright, I'm just gonna stop here. If I keep going, this video is going to turn into how to find a sugar baby 101. So let me be very clear. Everything I'm describing is about social reality. I'm explaining how the system exists, not telling anyone what to do. Now, technically speaking, you could argue that renting a wife is allowed under the framework of a temporary marriage. But here's the key thing people need to understand. Temporary marriage, by definition, is a short-term marriage. The question is, how short? It can be as short as 1 hour, sometimes even 30 minutes. And during that time, the couple is legally allowed to live openly as husband and wife. So you can probably see the issue. This loophole can very easily be used to buy sex. In fact, in large cities like Tehran, there are even people known as temporary marriage brokers. One Iranian friend told me a story. He once helped a foreigner arrange 2 temporary marriages, each lasting 120 minutes, for a total of $1,000 US. Now, personally, I think that price included a very obvious foreigner surcharge, because when I looked it up, local rates are usually much lower. For Iranian men, prices typically range from $50 to $100 US, and even the high end rarely goes above $200 US. But brokers are not the only way. There is also a more traditional method. Let's use the city of Shiraz as an example. Every night around 7 p.m., men who are looking will pretend to be Uber drivers. They drove to a circular road near the city center and just loop around. Meanwhile, women just walk along the roadside. If a man and a woman make eye contact, the man pulls over and starts a conversation through the car window. If the woman is interested, she would then get in the car. So why do it this way? Because the morality police can't really see what's happening inside the car. And even if they do, they can't chase a moving car. And even if they somehow stop the car, the couple can always say, oh, this is just a Uber ride, we're doing business, nothing else. Once the woman is in the car, most of the time it's just conversation. Nothing usually happens right away. But if the conversation goes well, they exchange phone numbers and meet again later to finish the transactions. So why does something like this even exist in Islamic law? The answer goes back to the Quran itself. In chapter 4, there is explicit permission to enter into lawful marriage for a limited time. This is the theological foundation of temporary marriage. Here's the case. Historically, this emerged during the early days of Islam. When the Prophet Muhammad led military campaigns, large number of Muslim men were killed. Women, especially widows, were left without protection or support. At the time, so many men had gone off to war that the Arabian Peninsula was left with very few men, and life became extremely hard for women. To address this, Muhammad permitted both polygamy and temporary marriage. Muhammad himself had 12 wives, many of whom were widows. Some were widows of fallen Muslims, others were non-Muslims who had become enslaved through war. This is also why temporary marriage requires clearly defined financial support. Of course, caring for widow is just one reason, but there was another very practical purpose. During wartime, soldiers stationed abroad often abused local women. The Prophet's response essentially was, you cannot simply take women by force. If you want to take women, you must provide for them. I know it still sounds pretty messed up, but in that historical context, this was actually a step forward. Rather than allowing total chaos, temporary marriage imposed a time limit, financial responsibility, and a contractual obligation. It was more structured than adultery, but lighter than permanent marriage. In other words, it was a more civilized option than no rules at all. But that was 1400 years ago. Ideas that made sense back then don't always fit neatly into modern society. Today, Islam is broadly divided into 2 major branches, Sunni and Shia. They differ in many ways, but one of the biggest differences is their attitude towards temporary marriage. The Sunnis' position is that temporary marriage was a historical emergency measure. Once society stabilized, it was gradually abolished. That's why in the most Muslim countries today, temporary marriage is considered illegal or immoral. So if you ever go to Saudi Arabia and casually ask someone about entering a temporary marriage, don't do that. You might get beat up to death. I'm just being honest. If that happens, that's on you. But Shia's position is very different. Shia Islam places strong emphasis on authority of Muhammad and his family line. Their argument is simple. If the Prophet never explicitly abolished it, then it remains lawful. And that's why temporary marriage survived and is still in use in Iran today. Iran Islamic law is, on paper, extremely sexually repressive. But here's the thing, most of those sexually restrictive laws were never fully enforced in reality. Why? Because sexual repression is only a compliance test. As long as the test itself is not openly broken, underground sexual freedom serves useful purpose. It generates money, it creates jobs, and it relieves social pressure caused by long-term sanctions, currency collapse, and economic stagnation. Now here's something that surprised many people. Khomeini was not a rigid ideologue. In 1983, he authorized gender reassignment surgery and even provided medical subsidies. Can you imagine that? From that angle, Khomeini almost sounds more progressive than Elon Musk. But why he does that? Because according to him, it reduces homosexuality. But we need to be very careful here. Reducing homosexuality through transition doesn't actually eliminate homosexual people. It just makes them appear normal in the eyes of others. What's reduced is not homosexuality itself, but a visible homosexuality. Once again, sexual orientation becomes a compliance test, not a religious taboo. To put it bluntly, as long as you look obedient in public, what you do in private doesn't really matter. Religion is religion, politics is just politics. Iran's theocratic government uses religion as a tool of governance. They are pragmatists who weaponize morality. This episode was originally meant to be about Iran's recent political trends. But during my research, I was genuinely surprised to discover how extensive Iran's sex industry really is. And compared to that, Iranian politics suddenly felt less interesting. What you have seen today is just the tip of the iceberg. If this episode performs well, I might turn this into a full series on Iran's underground sex economy. If you liked it, hit the like button and tell me in the comment section. With that, I will see you in the next one.